before meeting with Accrue, we knew that we had to have a financial plan, and we thought we had one, but we probably didn't really have one in effect. So I think meeting with the team early on, it actually helped us establish a framework for how we should actually go ahead and start building one. So they were probably the initial phase in us wanting to put a financial plan together. I felt like I needed to start investing. I knew that we're having a young family, we had to start making some moves outside of just having our residential property, but I didn't know how we were going to start doing that. I wasn't sure whether it was shares or whether it was property or what my first move should be, especially being a single income home and having young kids, quite a high risk situation. So I knew we had to start, but I didn't know how to start. And I think the guys just gave me a really simple, easy way to just tip my toe in the water and get that ball rolling. I thought getting into the property game with an investment property was going to be a bigger venture than it probably actually is. So Accrue were great in being able to say, hey, look, when you break it down and reverse engineer the process of getting a property, this is actually your financial commitment, probably not what you initially thought it would be. So thinking about refinancing my mortgage and having to put my back up against the wall with a huge loan, that was my understanding of how I was going to get an investment property, but that's not actually the case. So probably wasn't until I sat down with the Accrue and they showed me what the weekly commitment would be that I realised, okay, it's not a 5 or 6 year plan. We could start this straight away if we want to. Before we met the team at Accrue, I thought that we really would be stretched if we were to buy another property, which is why I was thinking of other investment options. But then when we looked at it as a week-to-week contribution, we knew that cash flow wasn't going to be an issue for us based on the property that Accrue thought was right for our situation. Yeah, our situation was a little bit unique because my wife's not working. Now she is working, and we knew that would gradually start increasing. So we had to kind of play the short game in terms of cash flow and what we could service, but then the long game in that we wanted to have a property that we could leverage with our residential property, then buy our dream family home eventually. They were really active and supportive in the process of us looking at short, medium and long-term goals and how property played a part in that. So they were able to give us a couple of different options and probably help us move away from making emotional decisions about where to buy, because they're areas that we didn't necessarily grow up in, but they're great investment areas, but we didn't have really an emotional connection or any personal experience with those suburbs. So the big thing that Accrue helped us with was being able to separate the emotion and just look at the numbers and then make a decision based on what our long-term plan was in terms of using property as an investment strategy. When it came to deciding where the property was going to be, Accrue helped us remove any kind of emotional connection and just use numbers to show us where they thought, or where the market is saying that property is going to be in 5-10 years time when we're looking to leverage it with our residential property and get a big family home. So they were great in showing us numbers based on what is the rental demand in that area and what is the rental return in that area and how does it stack up in terms of the shortfall and what we'd have to pay. So they just used numbers and they showed us that the market was going in a particular direction, and regardless of what it did in the short term, because it's always going to fluctuate, over the period of time we were looking to invest, there was never going to be any issues with rental opportunity because the market has been doing a similar thing for a very long time. So they were just great at putting the numbers in front of us, showing us the success they'd had with other similar properties, and again just helping us remove any emotional connection to the suburbs and just saying this is what they're doing in terms of data, and this is what we think they're going to continue to do. So they were just great at giving us the numbers and helping us realise that the opportunity was there regardless of whether we knew about the suburb. It was a real catch-22 for me and my wife because we're big D-type personalities. We like to control things and we like to look at details and we like to really have the final say in everything that we do. But the trade-off was that to do that, you've got to be really, really well informed, and we're not product experts in property. That's just a simple fact. I work in strength and conditioning. My wife's a primary school teacher. They're our specialty areas. So foregoing control was one of the big challenges. But once we sort of got over that hurdle of saying, hey, these guys are industry specialists. They know exactly what they're doing in terms of property and investment and finding tenants, then things got a lot easier. So initially it was kind of confronting because my wife is working part-time, I'm working full-time. Our focus is our kids, 2 and 4. So we purely didn't have the time to get enough product knowledge for us to feel comfortable within ourselves to invest time or money into making a decision around property. So I'm really big on outsourcing everything in life. If you can find someone that's a specialist and it costs you a little bit more, in the long run, it's always going to pay off. So we took that principle or that theory into our investing decisions, and we use Accrue to make the choice for us to some degree. Outside of all the steps required in the process to get going and get your property started and seek financial assistance to set yourself up, that stuff's there. I think anybody or any investment company is going to give you that to some degree. For me and my wife, the big benefit is being able to pick up my phone and call Ben when I see something happen in the housing market and say, mate, what do you reckon about this? Does it affect our investment strategy? Should we be concerned? And just having a phone call away with our direct consultant, for us, that's been huge. We haven't had to send emails to people. We haven't had to go through all these chains of hierarchy. I can just call up our consultant and ask him a question about property, about investing, about real estate, and he'll give me a straight answer. And he's a young dad and he lives in the suburbs and he's using the system himself. So for me, just having a touch point that's a phone call away that'll answer any question about real estate or investing, that's been a huge, that's invaluable, on top of all the great other systems that they give you to set up and start your portfolio. Time was a real issue because we've got young kids. Just bringing a 2 and a 4-year-old into the office and getting them to sit down and play with toys in the corner while we made really big decisions about their future was stressful initially. And then once they noticed that it was really tough for us, they adjusted. And we had Ben come out to our house. He met with my wife and I at cafes that were halfway between home and the city. I think once they knew our situation was unique, they adjusted to make it a bit easier for us. So that was a huge win. We knew that we were never going to have enough time, or there's never enough time to do all the research. You can talk yourself out of things eventually if you constantly keep going down rabbit holes. So I guess we did surface level research to be completely honest, and we were just looking to see whether we could find any reason not to believe the advice that we were getting, and to see whether we were getting a bum steer in the wrong direction. So rather than going and looking at everything, if anything, Accrue helped us narrow our focus to a couple of suburbs, and then we started doing research on those suburbs. Prior to that, hundreds of suburbs to choose from Victoria or interstate. People invest interstate, overseas. So, I mean, the research field when it comes to investing in property is enormous. You almost have to spend 12, 18, 24 months doing the research before you make a decision. But in that time, the money that you lose on not making a decision, you probably haven't gained in doing the research. So Accrue helped us at the very least identify which areas probably have some potential growth, and then we spent time looking at those areas and deciding which of the 4 or 5 was going to be best for us. So they helped us narrow the focus. To be honest, fingers crossed, we're going to be super fortunate because Ben initially, he predicted some really great infrastructure changes in that area, and now we've got a train station popping up 1 kilometre from where we've bought the property. The new Western United Football Club, who's joining the A-League, is building their stadium 5 or 10 k's from where we've bought the property. So a few things as they predicted, have fallen into place. So I think, fingers crossed, we've made a good decision. Even my family, because you take your ideas, first people you tell are your friends and family, right? So, and their feedback is emotional because they've bought in certain areas and they've had good or bad luck with property and investing, and then they give you their tainted view on investing and buying property, and that can sometimes really sway you because you value the opinions of those people because you care about them and they care about you. So when I went out and told my dad, this is where we're buying a property, he was like, Rockbank, where on earth is that? The West, why would you buy in the West? These really blanket statements about an entire part of Victoria. And it was only last week that my dad said, hey, I noticed in the paper that they said the West is a really good growth corridor, one of the biggest growth corridors in Victoria, and we had a bit of a laugh about it. And the truth is, I almost took that feedback as gospel because there's a relationship there over someone who's an investing expert. And that's just the way that humans think. So I think you have to overcome that challenge a little bit and sort of forego power, and then just knowing that they're educated and they've got your best interests at heart. So that took a while to get used to. I don't think the stress of taking on extra debt ever completely goes away. I doubt that even very successful people that have no debt completely relinquish stress or fear about money. So I just think that it changes. So there was fear about, hey, I should invest, I'm not investing, I'm not hedging my bets, everything's in my residential property. So there was fear about not making decisions, and there's going to be fear about making decisions, and there's going to be fear about having debt. But I think what's comforting is that we're proactively doing something. Like, we're making a move based on all the information that we've got and all the resources we can afford to access. And we're controlling the controllables, really. So debt, I think you can't make money without spending money. That's a fact. And if you're making financial risks that are calculated and decisions that are calculated, then that sort of comforts us, that we've done everything we physically can to research the areas, to spend money on a trained professional to help us find the right areas, and invest a quantity of money that's within a safe range for us. So we're doing everything we can. We're trying to mitigate risk. So the fear factor is always going to be there, but I think it's comforting to know we've done everything we can to try and avoid catastrophe. I'm a big believer that if you don't have the time or the knowledge on a subject matter, that you should obtain professional support and advice. That's something that sort of filters through all aspects of our family life, my wife and I, and our kids as well. So I'm a big believer that if you've got an industry expert and they've got knowledge you don't have, then they're in a better position to make decisions for you than you are. That's just a fact. So we're still in the early phases, so I'm really seeing some great things, and I think the outcomes are going to be really positive. But my message to any family or friends that ask me about how we started, I would say, spend some time and money investing in industry experts and relinquish a little bit of control, and you'll be in a better place. Look, the way we saw it was return on investment is going to be really good. Like I said, if I looked at the amount of time that I was going to spend having to go out and look at suburbs, look at homes, handle phone calls from real estate agents, if I'd retrospectively gone through that process and looked at the time I spent on that money is irrelevant. I think if you look at minute for minute work and effort, it could take you 3-4 months to decide where you want to buy a property, then manage all the paperwork associated with your broker and all the rest of it. 3 or 4 months of time and commitment versus $5,000 or $6,000, it was a no-brainer. So it wasn't until we probably looked at it that way that this is actually quite a big, there's a big time resource required to buy a property. We don't have time, we've got a little bit of money, so let's invest the money and save the time.